What is up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com, your home for the 2020 World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined by Matt Moreno. The second time today, a show we weren't necessarily expecting to do, and yet here we are. Breaking news. Max Scherzer is not pitching Game 6 for the Dodgers. There's been speculation, maybe it's an opener, maybe it's a bullpen game, maybe he will pitch. The sense I get is he's not pitching. This is most likely related to arm soreness. So, Matt, I'll start with you because when we recorded earlier today, we were waiting for the Max Scherzer press conference that never happened. And you said to me right before, that's weird. Max Scherzer, they didn't do anything. They didn't reschedule it. They didn't say anything. And both of us immediately are like, well, he left the last game with arm soreness. Here we are 6 days later, and he's not showing up for a press conference. That's fishy. The report comes out tonight that he is not pitching tomorrow. So, Matt, why don't you catch us up? What have we heard as far as why this is and what this might mean? And we'll get into how the Dodgers react after that.
Yeah, so first and foremost, Jorge Castillo of the LA Times, he was the first to break the news tonight. So credit to him for, kind of getting that scoop. And since then, just every report has pointed to his arm. Max Scherzer's arm hasn't responded. And, when he came out of his Game 2 start, he only went 4 1/3 innings. When he came out of it, in the moment, I remember everybody kind of reacting like, wait a minute, like, why is he coming out already? Scherzer looked okay with the fact that he was handing over the ball to Dave Roberts that early, which, of course, is a complete break from how he usually is. And sure enough, after that game, he said, I had a dead arm and I knew I couldn't go any longer. He voiced confidence that he would be okay moving forward, that he would recover. He said, it's not any ligament damage. It's not tendons or anything. It's just my arm is tired. Yeah. And there was reason to believe him, obviously. He was going to get an extra day of rest before the Game 6 start. I don't remember what show we were on here. I was on here with you and Daniel last week at some point. I said, look, like, he's optimistic, but hey, he was also optimistic going into the NLCS. They ended up having to push him back. So now here we are. To me, and we can kind of get into this a little bit later. I think my hope is that just let him be done for the NLCS. I mean, the Dodgers have been playing catch up this entire time. If he can't pitch tomorrow, there's really no need to think or expect he could go in a Game 7 either.
Yeah. Yeah, and we'll get into the options that lay in front of the Dodgers in a moment, but I think it's just worth saying, look, Scherzer is a tough guy. Scherzer is a guy that has pitched in any situation, in every situation that has been asked of him, and so I haven't seen it, thankfully, but there's no reason to question Scherzer's toughness or his competitiveness. There is probably nobody in all of baseball, except for maybe Clayton Kershaw, that would more like to get the ball tomorrow when this game starts, and yet Scherzer can't go. And so on one hand, you have to respect that he's being honest, that he's not going to walk into a game where the Dodgers need to win and tell everybody he's fine when he's not. And yet it raises some concerns. Obviously, This goes back to the decision to pitch him in Game 5 of the NLDS in the 9th inning. He had never come out of the bullpen. It was his first career save in any situation. And so a fascinating decision to look back on. At the time, there were a lot of people that were fine with it, thrilled about it. Obviously, he gets the outs, the Dodgers win, but now we're starting to see the ramifications of some of those decisions, just as the Julio Urias decision in Game 2 trickled all the way in to later in the series as well. But let's go to the big question, and folks joining us on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, this is where we need your help, where I'd love to hear from you. As far as I see it, there's two big decisions that the Dodgers could make. Option 1 is Walker Buehler pitches tomorrow on short rest. We've seen him do this before already once this postseason. It was not his last start, so he did have at least sort of a normal rest in between what would potentially be 2 shortened starts. And I think the reason you would pitch Buehler would only be if you believe there is any hope that Scherzer would be ready to go on Sunday. Could you move Buehler up and go to Scherzer on Sunday? That would be option 1. Option 2 is you just need to throw a bullpen game at some point. And if you need to win 2 games and one of them needs to be a bullpen game, then you most likely throw it on Saturday. Let Buehler get his normal rest, and he's got to win a game anyways if you're going to win. And so let him throw on Sunday. So, folks, I'll look through the comments now and see what we see. Chase says bullpen game in 6, Buehler in Game 7. T. Bernard says the same thing. Bullpen, I'd give Walker the rest. Let's see. Yeah, some people mentioning some names that could be called up because there is some rumors about that, and we can talk about that. Thad says, is this the David Price decision? That's really an interesting one. A lot of people not happy about Dave Roberts and his decision to do that. Let's see. Yeah, Gary says, I agree. No other choice. I'm assuming that's with bullpen tomorrow. Gray says bullpen tomorrow. Lynn says it'll be David Price. The Savage Gamer says put David Price in on Saturday. There's some Mitch White calls here. Obviously, Matt and I did a video earlier today talking about if Justin Brule were removed from the roster, which is still a possibility that the Dodgers could go to a guy that could give them length. Mitch White, Andre Jackson would be two options on that front. Obviously, they added David Price, who could give them some length as well. Gonsolin is a name that's being thrown out. Emerita says bullpen game. And so I'll start, and I think the clear decision here, I'll start with this. If you believe there's any chance that Scherzer is available for Sunday, I would personally actually roll the dice with Walker Buehler on Saturday and just see what you get. As I say that out loud, I'm also the guy at our post-game show the other night that asked Daniel 35% seriously whether you would just go for a bullpen game in Game 6 no matter what, even if Scherzer and Buehler were both healthy, because bullpen games have been your most effective approach, and then you just piggyback Buehler and Scherzer in Game 7 and hope for the best. And so I guess what I'm saying is I can talk myself into either one of those scenarios. I see the value in, hey, let's just go out with guns blazing, take our chances. Let's not lose with Walker Buehler sitting on the sidelines. Let's throw him on 4 days rest, on a day short rest, and go for it. But I could also see the bullpen game angle. Yes, Joe Kelly is out, so the guy that was your starter last time around isn't available, but everybody is well rested. And if you have so many guys that even a bullpen game on Saturday wouldn't destroy your bullpen for Game 7 if you got there. So I'm talking myself in circles, Matt. What would you do? Would you go bullpen game, or would you go Buehler on short rest?
I would go bullpen game. And I think, what I'll base my answer off of is, like I just said a few minutes ago, I don't believe Max Scherzer is going to be in any. If he can't pitch Saturday, I don't see anything significant changing from Saturday to Sunday, because, like you said, he's a competitor.
Yeah.
So I think if he felt he could give them 3 innings, basically be a quote unquote opener, I think they would have done that.
Yeah, it's a good point.
But I mean, he just by not starting, like, to scratch him, it just, to me, comes across as, one day isn't going to make much of a difference. So, I think you just keep it runs counterintuitive, right? When you get into these postseason situations, because the line of thinking in an elimination game is there is no tomorrow. Like, why are you saving so-and-so for tomorrow when that's not guaranteed? But frankly, I mean, the Dodgers their backs are both literally and figuratively up against a wall now.
Yeah.
And if you roll the dice with Walker Buehler in Game 6, what if on short rest again he doesn't go deep into the game?
That's a great point.
Now you've turned that into a bullpen game, and
knowing
who knows, even if Max Scherzer possibly can pitch Sunday, what are you going to get from him? Then that's probably another bullpen game. So, it sounds funny because, like, I don't want to repeat myself, but you don't save players in an elimination game, but you just, like, in this case, you really can't. And like I mentioned on the show we recorded this afternoon, Cody Bellinger mentioned other teams, when they do a bullpen game, that it's typically not a positive, but for the Dodgers, it was a strength all season. I mean, they navigated these bullpen games very well, and it's a credit to each and every relief pitcher that they use in the time at those different times. And obviously it's not the position you would want to be in, but it sort of is what it is. And frankly, I mean, we could go on and on about the pitching. If Max Scherzer, a bullpen game, Walker Buehler, if they don't get any run support, it won't matter.
Yeah, and it's worth pointing out. I mean, we made this. So Joe Kelly gave up 2 runs in the first inning and then was removed. He's out for the series. He's out for the season. The guys who came in after Kelly, 8 1/3 inning pitched, 3 hits, no walks. That's what they allowed. I think they had 9 strikeouts over that stretch as well. Phil Bickford was not a part of that group because he was basically exhausted from the night before. Brule was not available. Whether or not he's available remains to be seen. Tony Gonsolin also was not available. Again, I don't think anybody's begging for Tony Gonsolin to be in that slot. So with that said, Matt, I think you make a great point that you bring Walker on short rest, then you risk possibly shaving 1 to 2 innings off of the start that you're hoping to get out of him, which if you need to make a bullpen game in 1 of 2 days, that's problematic. Now, again, the good news for the Dodgers when you say bullpen game is you actually don't need necessarily a bulk guy. Because if you count the guys that you trust, you'd say, I trust Jansen, I trust Trinan, I trust Knebel, I trust Vesia, I trust Gratterall. We've just named 5 guys already, and Evan Phillips, pitched really well, got you 4 outs yesterday. So you got 5 guys that you, trust inherently. And of those 5 guys, Jansen, Trinan, and Gratterall are all even Knebel maybe, I mean, are all guys that everyone but Vesia that I just mentioned, you would probably trust for more than 3 outs. So between those 5, if you said, hey, can I get 6 to 7 innings from those 5, I think it's feasible. And then you say, all right, well, maybe you have a lefty. Hopefully Brule's available and you can get maybe a couple outs from him. Bickford is a guy that you could go to for 4 to 6 outs if you needed it. Evan Phillips has pitched well. So that's what's fascinating. So my question to you, Matt, is you have Tony Gonsolin and you have now David Price on the roster. Would you attempt to go with a bulk guy at some point? Or would you just say, we're going to throw 7 different guys and every single one of them is going to get between 3 and 6 outs for us and we'll see what happens?
Yeah, I think you just have to mix and match. And I know we had a lot of people commenting that like you were reading off saying let David Price start. Yeah. You and I were both not jokingly, but saying, look, he's getting added to the roster in place of Joe Kelly, but he's probably not going to pitch.
Yeah.
Well, that suddenly has changed, and frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if David Price is the opener, because I think the Dodgers, if they turn to Corey Knebel again, but he hasn't really fared well in that role.
And he was great when he got taken out of the opener role.
Right. So I think if they're not going to use him,
maybe Vesia. I mean, because you're going to have the 2 lefties at the top of the lineup, presumably. So with Vesia, I just don't know if that's a high enough. I think you need to say, especially assuming Brule comes off the roster. Now, if Brule stays on, then I think maybe he's your first inning guy. Interesting.
But if not, it wouldn't surprise me if it's David Price, because it needs to be somebody who can handle the lefty hitters at the top of the lineup. And it'd only be an inning. I don't see it being Tony Gonsolin. If you go back to last year in the NLCS, the Dodgers had an opener for him against the Braves because they didn't want him going through the top of the lineup X amount of times. So I don't see him.
And he's been bad.
Right.
So here's a spicy one for you, Matt. There's a name that's circulating in the chat.
Oh no.
What can we get from Julio Urias in the next 2 days?
Oh no.
Yeah, trust me. I'm right there with you. He came in relief in game 2 and then was asked to start game 4. It was not good. His velocity was down. He gave up 5 earned runs in 5 innings and probably surprisingly got through 5 innings, I think is a safe assessment. He's a lefty. The Dodgers are desperate. He didn't throw a ton of pitches in his last start. He did get through 5 innings, but is Julio Urias available Saturday or Sunday in your estimation? I mean, because look, we know the answer is yes in Dave Roberts' mind, but in Matt Moreno's mind, should he be available?
Well, should he? No. But was I expecting him to be available if it got to a game 7?
Yeah,
absolutely.
You didn't know he's closing out game 6 and 7? That's what just pencil it in.
I guess obviously with the way things have gone, you can probably move him up. And I think some of it will tie into, like I said earlier, is, you can't play. The Dodgers aren't in a position to really play for tomorrow. Yeah. Tomorrow being Sunday, obviously, in this scenario.
Yeah.
So would it surprise me if Julio now is part of the bullpen picture for game 6 to get an inning late? Absolutely not. Would I be confident in it? No. And that's not to knock him or his ability. It's just he has pitched a ton. And, however this postseason ends, we're going to definitely have a very interesting kind of, sort of retrospective on how everything went. And we'll have to review all that.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as I see Julio's name, he wasn't on my radar, but we're talking about an opener. We're talking about lefties at the top of the lineup. We're talking about a guy who the expectation that he has for himself is that of a starter, who that would be a comfortable routine move. I mean, is it crazy to think that, what are we, 3 days removed from his start? Normal bullpen day, as they say. This is just his normal bullpen day. I mean, could Julio Urias be the opener and you throw him out there in the first and try and get some lefties out and see what happens? To me, I'm saying it out loud. It doesn't sound crazy, only because as far as openers go, the guys that they have relied on have either been Knebel, who has been bad in both of those spots, Kelly, who's no longer available, and ideally you would want a left-handed pitcher in that spot. But to your credit, to your point, you probably want to save Vesia for a spot when Freddie Freeman comes up with 2 guys on later in the game, or Eddie Rosario, who's basically the best player in the history of baseball right now.
I mean, they just need to start intentionally walking Eddie Rosario. Let's be done with that whole pitching to him. It's enough of the doubles, the home runs. Just walk him.
Yeah. And so the other question that people are asking, Roger's mentioning it, Eric is mentioning it, is the decision on Justin Brule. So I think what's fascinating now is knowing that Scherzer is unavailable. You kind of hinted at this. The Dodgers have a decision to make, because do you keep him on the roster, knowing that he is unavailable to you. Now, I mean, look, if Scherzer says he has dead arm, I suppose there's a scenario where he looks at Dave and says, look, if you need 3 outs from me, I can get you 3 outs. I can't get you a start, but like, screw, I mean, like, he's a gamer, he's a veteran. You're not really worried about longevity stuff with him. Like, I could see him saying, hey, if you get in a bad spot, Dave, and, you're looking out at the bullpen, and it's me and it's David Price, and you need somebody to come in and try and get a strikeout or something, give me a call. But that's a decision to make, because if he's not available for Saturday and Sunday, then there's obviously a huge question mark of, is he going to be available a week from now in the World Series? And if he were taken off the roster for the NLCS, he would immediately be ineligible for the World Series. So they have a decision to make with Scherzer's roster spot. But I also wonder if Justin Brule, who says, hey, my arm's not feeling great, well, now they have an excuse, if there's a guy like Brule that they want to take off of the roster, to go get a Mitch White. So we both agreed that if you were going to go righty and you were interested in length, Mitch White would be the guy. I mean, but this is like, are you really? I mean, because I think David Price would be the alternative, and David Price is clearly ahead of Mitch White in the pecking order because he's on the roster and Mitch White is not. And so David Price as an opener, like, I could see it happening. Again, the lefty thing, I know Price's splits aren't perfect, but I could see them throwing Price out there in the first and kind of hoping for the best. It's a guy they haven't seen yet, so it gives them another look. Maybe the scouting report's a little off. I mean, if those were your choices, would you prefer Price or Mitch White if they said, hey, one of these guys is going to start?
I think Price, just because he's a lefty, and maybe we could probably pull up. I'm not 100% sure of Mitch White's splits, but I don't feel like he was, and I could be proven wrong by the stats, but just, I'm a big eye test guy as well. Yeah. And Mitch White was in, and so was David Price, obviously, but Mitch White was too inconsistent for me to kind of trust in this specific scenario. I think the Scherzer news does make it more likely that Justin Brule will be removed from the roster, assuming he can't pitch.
Yeah. Because it's fascinating because Brule, you would think of a guy that's sort of expendable, and yet he's a lefty against a team that struggles against lefties, and he has actually been good. And so it's not like there's anybody on the roster where you're just like, forget this guy, because you can't take off a hitter, and there's no obvious candidate in the bullpen that I can see as a clear removal. Real quick, sorry if it's getting laggy. We're having some internet issues over here. But just real quick, looking at Mitch White's splits, which you mentioned, he is better against righties than lefties. Righties had a 596 OPS against him this year. Left-handed hitters had a 678 OPS. Basically the same number of bats on both sides, 3 home runs to each side. Strikeouts almost identical, walks almost identical. So strictly just a couple more hits that he gave up to lefties and a couple fewer at bats. But basically all the numbers pretty much straight across, which is interesting. So I don't know if that is something that you take into account, but the one thing that you would say you would make a positive case for both of those guys is it's a new arm. In a series where it feels like you've seen everybody, at least it would be somebody that gives you a new look. Obviously, Price isn't going to come out throwing with any of the velocity that these other guys are. He could throw up there and just start throwing old man junk at him and kind of see what happens and maybe try to get some outs that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I had to sort of pick one, and obviously we don't even know if Mitch White will end up being on the roster.
Yeah.
The Dodgers could catch a break, and Justin Brule could say, "Hey, I played catch today. I felt fine. I'm good. Keep me. I'm going to stay on the. I can stay on the roster, whatever the case may be." So I'll just say, like, independent, regardless of how the Justin Brule situation unfolds, I think David Price is probably the most likely to start and be an opener. And if he pitches well in the first inning, he's somebody who could then maybe get you another out or two in the second inning, and just kind of help you piece the game together. And if his spot comes up in the order, he's been known to swing the bat a little bit, so maybe he drives in a run.
Don't get me started on how Dave Roberts uses pinch hitters early in the game. Okay, we had a big segment on that one. No Andy Burns with runners in scoring position, please, is basically the summary, as with Gavin Lux and Matt Beatty on the bench. But I mean, you make a good point with the as far as an opener goes, there's kind of two pieces to the equation. The first piece is knowing that the Braves are going to have lefties at the top. So their biggest guys are going to be Rosario and Freeman, and those two guys are going to be hitting somewhere in the top 3. As we pointed out, Albies against lefties is much better than he is against righties. So it's kind of a mixed bag, but you assume that a left-hander in the first inning is kind of ideally what you would want to go to. The second thing is, if you could it's the only time that you could put a pitcher in and know for certain that the pitcher's spot in the order is 9 spots away. So it's also a guy that ideally you would like to maybe get 2 innings from. Because if it's a guy like Gratterall, who maybe you're saying, hey, we're going to need 2 from you at some point tonight, Brewstar, well, you can't just pick, like, you're going to put him in the where the right spot matchup is from a hitting perspective, but who knows where he's going to be in the lineup, and then you've got to make some double switches and stuff. So that's the other piece of the equation. And so I think if we're talking about the options from a bullpen perspective, I think, like you said, Price makes a lot of sense. As insane as it sounds, I would not be shocked if Julio Urias comes out and makes the first appearance. But for me, if there was one other guy, I wonder if Gratterall would be the third, just because he's been effective, just because they've gotten length from him. And so you say, hey, we could theoretically get the way he pitched the other night. He could have gone for a third inning. Now, his pitch count was really low, but he just seems like the type of guy where, yeah, let's throw him in there because he could at least potentially give us 2 innings. The only other guys in that camp are Treinen and Jansen. So I could see something like that. Maybe Knebel would be fourth on my list just because we've seen him do it. So, and then, I'm not even including Mitch White because he's not there yet.
Yeah, Gratterall is a great point. That wouldn't surprise me too much. And honestly, this could kind of explain why he only pitched 2 innings the other night and was just like I think he finished at 14 pitches or something. He was really 14 efficient. Pitches. And I was with you, and a lot of people were thinking, hey, like he's rolling, he's efficient, save the bullpen, let him go another inning. There was a little bit of surprise when he didn't. Well, and this is kind of something that Dave Roberts alluded to during the series when he was answering questions about pitching decisions and criticism. He said, a lot of the times, probably most of the time, he didn't say most. He said a lot of the time, fans and those on the outside of the organization don't have all the information that I do, and it wouldn't surprise me if this is one of those cases.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. Well, we've got some people in the chat. Kind of, it's funny when we first went on. The first comment that showed up here was actually, I guess I can't even go back far enough, but it was basically like, we've got this, like, stay positive was kind of the first thing. And then of course that was immediately met with, we're effed and screw this. And it's all busted. So here's what I'll say. Somebody jokes in here that they can, Mr. Cat says, we're done, Jeff, but the glimmer of hope in your eyes is something to behold. LOL. And the bullpen game is not a cuss word in Dodgerland. Like, yes, Joe Kelly being out is a big part because that's a guy that you expect at least 3 outs, and he's in the category of could get you more. So that is like really bad news if you're the Dodgers. But still, if you told me, hey, the Dodgers are going to play, and the guys you're going to see are Evan Phillips, in no particular order, but you're going to see Phillips, you're going to see Bickford, you're going to see Knebel, you're going to see Gratterall, you're going to see Treinen, you're going to see Jansen, and you're going to see Vesia. Those are the 7 guys that you're going to go out there, and your season is on the line. Those 7 guys are going to get you 9 innings. I feel good. Like, I like that group to me is not like an automatic 4 runs. Like, I think that group allows 3 runs. That gives you a chance to win. And the way those guys have pitched, like, you could argue 3 seems crazy. Like, you could argue that. And on top of this, let's point out, Scherzer has not been great. Buehler has not been great. Like, I'm being serious when I was asking Daniel and saying, as good as the bullpens look, they have an off day tomorrow. Is there a chance you consider a bullpen game in Game 6? This was before Scherzer got hurt. And I just said the way that those guys have pitched in the bullpen, the way those guys have pitched in the starting rotation, it's not crazy to me. Because the other piece of this is, some of you are saying, oh, well, Sunday. What do you do about Sunday? First of all, you have to get there. But second of all, if those 7 guys throw 9 innings, 7 or 8, like 6 of the 7 are probably available the next day. Like, the odds of any of those guys having thrown more than 20 to 25 pitches, which is a lot, but in a Game 7 and your best guys, like, you just trot them back out there and you say, all right, Treinen, I need 50 pitches from you in the next 2 days. Jansen, I need 45 pitches from you in the next 2 days. They say, great, hand me the ball. Let's do this. So this is the craziest thing I'm going to say tonight in some people's minds. This does not at all change my confidence level in Game 6. Here's the crazy part. My confidence, I might be more confident now than I was with Scherzer on the mound. Because I think Scherzer's a wild card. I think our bullpen is far less of a wild card. Am I crazy, Matt?
I think only from the standpoint that, statistically speaking, because now you need to rely on multiple sheer volume increases, the number of pitchers that need to pitch well, just your odds decrease of that happening, right? Whereas, and I agree with you, like I mentioned on earlier today when we recorded, I thought maybe I was expecting Max Scherzer to kind of have a Max Scherzer performance because he hasn't had one yet since, his first 9 starts with the team. My confidence level, I wouldn't go as far as you did, and I can only imagine and I know you'll get to them, what some of the comments are saying.
They're
about
being
you
nice to me
arguably
so
being
far,
more.
Matt, so we're in good
Okay,
shape.
well, that's good. That's good. Uh, I'm not necessarily more confident with the bullpen with a bullpen game now, but I'm also not significantly less
Yeah,
confident. And like you just said, the bullpen has pitched well. It also, I mean, it sort of is what it is, right? Like the Dodgers are in a tough spot. They're going to do the best that they can, which is what they've been doing this entire time. And again, if it was Max Scherzer or Walker Buehler on short rest or the bullpen, they could give up anywhere from 0 to 3, 4 runs. If the offense isn't hitting, then it's not going to
yeah,
matter.
yeah, yeah. Getting to some comments, Joe Renteria, we are doomed. Nada says bullpen has been doing so damn good. I actually have confidence in our bullpen. Eddie Mendoza, you crazy bro. Right below him, this is the beauty. Right below him, body politic. I'm with you, dude. Feel better about a bullpen game. Derek Wang, nice Jeff, nice take. Eddie Mendoza, you're in denial. Thad says that's not denial, it's delusion. A Wise.
I
Okay.
think, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I think one thing too is the Dodgers, in some sense, and it sounds funny because they're the ones facing elimination, but they are playing with house money in some regard. Because if you're the Braves, you don't want to lose Game 6 because then literally, like, no team wants to ever play a Game
Yeah.
7, right? Because anything can happen. Whether you're the favored team, whether you're the team who had a 3-1 lead and now you're in a Game 7, like at that point, the pressure the pressure is
Yeah.
even. So if you're the Braves, I mean, you want to close it out, and who knows how they may respond to that sort of
Yeah.
thing. So I mean, look, it is what it is. I think obviously, if you ask the Dodgers what their preference would be, it would be to have a healthy Max Scherzer on extra rest. But I think Dave Roberts, and I'm sure we'll hear it tomorrow in his pregame press conference, he's been confident in the bullpen all year. The bullpen has performed all season, and definitely in the playoffs. And he's going to put them in the best position he can for them to succeed, and just going to go do it and get it done. It's one You have to win
Yeah.
one game.
Yeah. So the two from a pitching perspective, the two games in which the Dodgers have allowed the least amount of runs in the season were game 1 they allowed 3 runs. So then game 2 they allow 5 runs. Game 3 they allow 5 runs. Game 4 they allow 9 runs. Game 5 they allow 2 runs. So the best two games from a runs allowed perspective were game 1 and game 5. Matt, what do game 1 and game 5 have in common? Bullpen games.
Bullpen game.
Bullpen games. The two best games the Dodgers have thrown so far are bullpen games. Now, if you want to tell me, hey, they've seen all these guys before, it's going to add up, it's going to catch up, sure, I will hear that. My point is just compared to the alternative. Like the alternative is Scherzer, who went 4 1/3 and gave up more runs than our bullpen did in any of those two games I just mentioned, basically, put them in a worse position. So for me, at least with a bullpen game, there's clear expectations. Yes, does it scare me that Dave Roberts has that much control over who stays in and who comes out? Yes, it's terrifying to me. But there you go. Laura's got a good comment. Jeff, you said we were losing yesterday. Who are you and where is Jeff Spiegel? That's a fair point. And just for the record, for those that are new to the show, a year ago, the Dodgers were down 3-1 in the NLCS. I came on our show depressed, despondent, with very little confidence, and I began picking the Braves to win. And do you know what happened, Matt, when I started picking the Braves to win? The Braves started losing. And then I continued to pick the Braves to win, and the Braves continued losing. And the Dodgers won and won and won. So I said I would continue to pick the Dodgers to lose continuously. And guess what? We won the World Series. So this year, I'm back. I was confident. I was picking the Dodgers, the Dodgers, the Dodgers, the Dodgers. I was right more than I was wrong until we got to the Braves. Then they go down 3-1, Matt. What did I do in game 5? I picked the Braves to win. And what did the Braves do in game 5? They lost. So what will Jeff be doing in game 6, Matt? Do you want to take a guess at what my prediction will be for game 6?
I think you have the Braves
I
winning
do have
game
the Braves
6.
winning game 6. Not because I actually think that's going to happen, but not because I believe in jinxes or superstition or any of that nonsense, but simply because for the sake of tradition, for the sake of the team, we talked about Daniel not going to a game because he was bad luck. He took one for the team. I will continue taking one for the team. I will continue picking the Braves. If people are going to unsubscribe from the channel because of that, I apologize to you. If you can't understand the logic here, or should I say, if you can't understand the lack of logic involved in my decision-making process, as I'm telling you out of one side of my mouth how confident I am in the bullpen game, and out of the other side of my mouth how I'm going to pick the Braves, then I don't know what to do. But there you go. Some more comments we've got here. THP, the bullpen is better than short rest Buehler. I agree with you. I think you could genuinely make an argument right now that the bullpen is better than full rest Buehler, that the bullpen is better than full rest Scherzer. And I don't mean that to be a hot take guy. I'm just saying look at the numbers of how those guys have performed. It has been good and not great, and the bullpen has been absolutely elite. Christian says Price has the postseason experience and has been a starter. Yes, that is true. If you look back on what he did in September and October, he made 6 appearances for the Dodgers. That was not because he was hurt. That's not because he was in the starting rotation. That was because the Dodgers didn't trust him. Those 6 appearances were not good either. A lot of base runners, not a lot of strikeouts. So that's what worries me with Price. Again, he's a lefty. I agree with you on the postseason experience thing. So there you go. Gary A., if Price pitches, we lose 10-2. Not sure I would go that far. I'm not sure David Price has that big of an impact. I think he's probably out of the game pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think that's what I was going to say is if things start to go sideways, if Price is who's pitching the first inning and things start to go sideways, they'll yank him right away. I mean, that's in an elimination game. I think Dave Roberts has enough sense of, hey, I can't kind of stick with a guy and hope he can figure it out.
Yeah, some people asking about Bauer. Bauer is not pitching in the series. He is not pitching in the World Series. That ship is long gone. Justin says, third bullpen game in the series. I don't like it. These guys will be fried if we move on. I understand the thought process there, but keep in mind, for most of these guys, it will just appear like a normal appearance. And also, the other thing with Kenley before Game 5, he had only appeared like once in the series or something. He had thrown like 9 pitches in a 7-day stretch or something like that. So I don't think these guys will be fried. Like if they're throwing 15 pitches and need to get asked to pitch on back-to-back days, that's pretty normal. Now, it's unique that you would ask 7 guys to all throw 15 pitches and then potentially 15 more the next day, but I don't see this being a Max Scherzer pitching out of the bullpen, Julio Urias pitching out of the bullpen, dooms you down the road scenario. If anything, starting Walker Buehler on short rest would be the thing that would have the most long-term impact, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think there's a few layers to that. One, if you go all the way back to the regular season, the Dodgers were conservative when they could be with their relief pitchers and usage for not maybe this literal reason, but for the postseason, for if and when they needed to push guys, they would be able to. Also, I mean, yes, a third bullpen game, even as successful as they've been, it's probably not preferred. But like I said earlier, and like I keep going back to, like, what other options do the Dodgers really have? Unfortunately, Tony Gonsolin, probably partly because of his shoulder issues twice throughout the year, probably partly because he hasn't really settled into, is he a starter? Is he a reliever? He hasn't been effective, right? So you don't, and Clayton Kershaw's injured. Like there's nobody to really fall back to. So at this point, it's making the best of the situation. And frankly, like we keep harping on, the Dodgers bullpen is a really good fallback option.
It's the best bullpen they've ever had. And when I say that, I'm not just talking about the thing that makes this unique is all the way down to guy number 7. It's guys that you trust. I mean, Phil Bickford is the guy that's probably 7. Evan Phillips, like those are probably number 7 and 8 in the bullpen as far as guys that you trust. And those guys have been fantastic all season long, but also in the postseason as well. So it's worth pointing out. Did you have something else you wanted to add there?
Yeah, I just think like that's a great point about the bullpen, and I feel the same way. And so that's also, and again, I know we'll get into this in our kind of first off-season show once everything is said and done, whenever it is said and done. But it's what makes some of the pitching decisions along the way this postseason so maddening.
Yeah. Getting to some more comments and questions here. We appreciate you folks joining us. We got a great crew, so we're going to extend this a little bit. Jesus asks, is Scherzer done for the year? We don't know. We know that he's not available tomorrow. The Dodgers have not taken him off of the roster.
Yeah, I forgot, it might have been Bill Plunkett. There was one of the beat writers who did say, maybe one from MLB.com, who did say there isn't any structural damage with Scherzer's shoulder, arm, whatever the case may be.
Okay.
So, I don't anticipate him being removed. I don't think you can't remove him from the roster because you don't know. And I think I don't think one more day of rest going from, not pitching in game 6 to maybe pitching game 7. I don't think that makes a difference. But if you can possibly save him until maybe a game 2 of the World Series, I think that could be significant. Maybe even game 1 of the World Series, which wouldn't be until Tuesday.
Yeah, I'm trying to look through. Fabian Ardaya at The Athletic just posted an article. And so I was just trying to see if he had any update on what would be there. So says the Dodgers have not announced their adjusted pitching plans. Their options are limited. They could slide Buehler up to start game 6 on short rest, but that would be the second time in 3 starts. He's pitched on fewer than 5 days rest 28 times in 108 career regular and postseason starts. They could also opt for their second career bullpen game. The Dodgers used 7 pitchers to navigate 9 innings in game 5, with just 2 of those arms topping 20 pitches. That goes back to the point of, I don't think there's a long-term situation there.
And I think there's something, if the bullpen game works and you get to a game seven, Walker Buehler's on regular rest. I know he hasn't been his sharpest, but he's been in this position before. And I think there's something to, a pitcher not only having experience in these big games, but wanting the big moments, feeding off the adrenaline. And I think he would be able to get you, 6 innings in a game seven, or at least into the sixth inning to then lighten the load on, a bullpen that might have just picked up significant usage the night before.
Yeah. Steve-O says this season is not it. The baseball gods against us. I mean, yeah, to have a 2-week stretch in which you lose Kershaw, you lose Muncy, you lose Joe Kelly, and now you lose Max Scherzer potentially. Justin Turner. Thank you. I knew I was missing somebody. So for those 5 guys, and look, we don't know if Scherzer's hurt for sure. So you definitely lost those 4 guys in a 2-week stretch, and potentially a 5th in Max Scherzer, or at least extended absence where he's missing, like we said, likely game 6 and game 7. That's a crazy, crazy situation the Dodgers found themselves in. And look, like if there's a team that can handle it, it's probably the Dodgers, because Justin Turner goes out, and no disrespect to Justin Turner, as our friend Daniel would say, but the Dodgers lineup is better right now without him. Chris Taylor is the guy who replaced him at third. He did all right. He had a decent night, I would say, in game 5. So let's get to that. Matt Nakama asked, what will the lineup look like for the Dodgers right-handed pitcher on the mound? Daniel and I talked briefly about this. Trey Turner obviously reaches base 4 times last night, hitting out of the number 2 hole. That was with the lefty on the mound. So historically, they have gone back to Seager in the 2 spot, Trey Turner in the 3 spot. People wanted to move Trey Turner down in the lineup. They were completely justified in wanting that. They move him up in the lineup. He reaches base 4 times. We know who's going to be in there for the most part. Bellinger will be in there. I think I'll ask you the big decision first, which is who plays first base and who plays center field. Cody Bellinger will be playing one of those positions, especially with a right-hander on the mound. The options alternatively would be, and by the way, AJ Pollock almost assuredly in left field after the game that he had. Yeah. So the decision would be, do you want Gavin Lux in center field, or do you want Matt Beatty in at first base? I think those are kind of the 2 big decisions. Of course, some people mentioned Albert Pujols potentially, but against a right-hander, I would be surprised with that decision. What do you think? I mean, I feel like there's somebody I'm missing there, but how would you navigate? Would you trust Gavin Lux back out in center field and Cody Bellinger at first base?
Yeah, I would. And that's honestly what I'm expecting to be the case. Dave Roberts, I forgot if it was after game 5 or if it was during his media availability today. He was asked a question about Gavin Lux, and he basically said he didn't, I guess, explicitly state Lux will be in the lineup, but he said Lux is going to help us win a game tomorrow. Okay. So I think that kind of answers that question. To me, at least, that's how I interpreted his response. And look, Lux should have caught that ball. He'll tell you he should have made that play. Things happen. I understand it's magnified in the postseason, and one mistake can literally send you home. You look at tonight, Kike Hernandez, who is as sure-handed as a position player that the Dodgers have ever seen, that baseball has ever seen. He dropped a ball on a similar play in deep center field.
He luxed it, as a bunch of people on Twitter said, unfortunately.
Yeah. So, I mean, it happens. And, like we've talked about, Gavin Lux, to me, he's looked – let's not also forget the double play that he started. And he got some help on a bad base running by Rosario. But Lux came in charging that sinking line drive, made a nice play. So he can handle center field. It was an error, and I understand, like, it's obviously more costly now than if it was in July, but they trust him. He has been hitting well for the most part, so I think he'll be in the lineup tomorrow. The only thing that I haven't been able to figure out is when Lux and Bellinger are both in the lineup, why they keep hitting them back to back, whereas
they did split them up at one. I think it was the last time both those guys. I think they threw Chris Taylor in between them, or maybe it was Justin Turner in between them. One of the 2, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I don't remember. I mean, all the lineups sort of bleed together in terms of order at this point, but I would definitely get back to sort of splitting it up, only because I think I'm of the mind that it makes it a little bit more difficult on the opposition, as opposed to, we see 2 lefties definitely, or are not definitely, I guess, because once you get in late in the game, the Dodgers could pinch hit and move guys around. But I just feel it locks you, if you're the Dodgers, it kind of locks you in and limits your options a little bit more. But
and I think, when Daniel and I were doing the show, Scherzer's a fly ball pitcher. So I think there was some argument to be made of, hey, put Cody Bellinger out in the outfield because you want your best defense out there with Scherzer on the mound. Well, again, breaking news, Max Scherzer will not be on the mound for the Dodgers in game 6. And so I think it's interesting. And also then I think it comes down to, well, now you probably feel a little bit more pressure to get some offense into the game. And, as much as I like Matt Beatty, he hasn't been as effective at the plate as Gavin Lux has. And Gavin Lux hasn't been overly effective, but he was 0 for 0 with 2 walks in his last start before being removed. And so with Chris Taylor filling in at third base, AJ Pollock, thankfully, sort of waking up and breaking out of this postseason slump, he's penciled into left field. I think I'm with you. I think Lux in center field is absolutely the move. And then that's still keeps your bench in a spot where you have Albert Pujols from the right side as a pinch hitter you trust, and you have Matt Beatty, a pinch hitter from the left side that you have some trust in as well. And so you've got 2 options there, and that gives you flexibility as well. If either of those guys comes into the game and you need to make a double switch, then Lux can come out, Bellinger can go out into center field. I mean, obviously, if AJ Pollock is struggling and his spot is the perfect spot for a double switch, that could happen as well. So we kind of know how the lineup will shake out at the top. It's going to be Mookie Betts. I would guess it's Corey Seager and then Trey Turner, but those 2 guys will be in some order in 2 and 3 spot. You've got Will Smith in the 4 spot. How would you handle it from there? Because look, Chris Taylor and Cody Bellinger have been 2 of the best hitters on the roster thus far, and they keep sitting down at the end. Is this the day when you get Will Smith, the righty, Cody Bellinger, the lefty, and then Chris Taylor, who am I thinking of?
Pollock.
Yeah, then you go Pollock, and then you go Lux, and you can kind of do your right, left thing all the way basically through the lineup, except for the 3 and the 4 would be the only time you'd have 2 right-handers next to each other.
I think it'll still be Pollock batting 5th. And one reason for that is I think, obviously, even if maybe he doesn't produce the same way he did the other night, you have a little bit more length at the top. Whereas if you put Pollock, Bellinger, Lux at the bottom of the lineup, and for whatever reason, those 3 kind of revert back to struggling, then you get into a situation where it's almost 3 automatic outs. So my guess is that's why Chris Taylor has been hitting so low in the lineup, is because he kind of protects Lux and Bellinger ahead of him. And if they do get on base, Chris Taylor is somebody who can obviously hit them in either with, a home run or a double or a single, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, absolutely. Somebody's asking for what the spread is, and I'm trying to figure out if there is a line up or not. I would imagine the line has been reposted. Let's see. Dodgers versus Braves. So you could look at, there's a series price, meaning if you want to bet the Dodgers to win the series. This is crazy to me. So what would you guess? The Braves are winning 3-2 with both of the last 2 games at home. Do you have any sense of what you would guess that the spread would be, either for the Dodgers to come back and win 2 in a row, or for the Braves to just win one of the next 2?
Well, I've seen some mixed information. Can those numbers be updated as the series goes along?
Yeah.
Or was
so
that,
right now, if you were
in?
betting it right now on Bovada, I'm looking.
Okay.
There is a line where you can bet on the Dodgers to win the series or the Braves to win the series.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way you've teed this up, and I think we've had this discussion amongst our staff offline, obviously. So I know the Braves, I think, aren't favored. Maybe they are now, but I don't see how they wouldn't be with 2 games at home to win.
Yeah, so
one.
the Braves are favored. They're minus 190.
Okay.
But what's crazy to me is, that's fairly good odds for a team at home to win one of the next 2. To put this in context, the Dodgers have been heavier favorites in one individual game for most of this series. There were multiple games where the Dodgers were minus 200 or more. So there isn't a live line on game 6 in particular. The Dodgers, by the way, plus 156. So you're only getting 1.5 times your money for the Dodgers to win back-to-back games in Atlanta with a complete question mark from a pitching perspective, which, I mean, there you go. That tells you what's going on there. Again, they do not have a game 6 line up. I don't know if there's other places that have a game 6 line up, but this is just a series price. It's all that we can get. So there you go. Some interesting stuff there. Okay. And so circling back, so you would go Pollock batting 5th, and then you would sort of taper the lineup from there. And you would leave, did you say you would leave Chris Taylor 8th?
I don't know if it's what I would, I always get stuck answering these questions between what I would do and what I think is going to happen. I wouldn't necessarily leave him at 8th, but considering what has been the case, I expect him to be hitting 8th. And I think, and I don't know. Basically, I expect the same lineup that they've rolled out with these same starters and, all the other games.
Yeah, and I mean, look, as ridiculous as it sounds, things have played out well where those guys are getting on base and Chris Taylor is coming up with 2 outs and runners on base. And so, the fear, I think, and the other piece too is you don't have to worry about your 8th guy getting intentionally walked in a bullpen game because you're going to have a pinch hitter behind him. Now, if we're being honest, the Dodgers have 2 pinch hitters that you're afraid of and a bunch of guys that the Braves they're like, wait, is this the pitcher? Oh no, it's Andy Burns. Sorry. That's it. Same thing. So not changing the dynamic there a ton, but yeah, so it'll be interesting. The lineup, I think, is a big point. How many runs? I'll ask you this. This will be one of our last questions here. And I'll ask folks on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. How many runs do the Dodgers need to score? What's the lowest amount of runs that if I told you the Dodgers score this many runs tomorrow, you're like, that's the lowest number where I would respond with, we win? 5 runs. So if the Dodgers can muster 5 runs offensively, you're like, I like my chances.
Yeah, I think so. I could definitely see a 5-3-ish, 5-4 win.
Look, 5 has been my number all postseason. If you've been watching this, you know, I've just said 5 runs. I don't know. Let's see if I still have the Dodgers schedule up. I do not. But I was going to say, I mean, like, there haven't been many games, at the very least, that the Dodgers have lost when scoring 5 runs. So, yeah, I mean, I'm with you. That's just confidence in the bullpen. Like, I'm telling you, I think that the expected runs against is going to be lower with a bullpen game.
Yeah, and I'll add, I guess, a caveat, if you will. I don't want to say the Dodgers need to score first tomorrow, but it
would help.
About 95% imperative that they probably score first tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay, we got lots of responses. List 4 says 18. List 4, I agree with you. 18 runs from the Dodgers. You could put this in pencil. You could put it in ink. You want permanent marker. 18 runs from the Dodgers, they win. Okay, there you go. Hot take. We'll crop that one out, and we'll throw that up on the old Twitter and see what happens. Brett agrees with us. He says 5. Christopher 3. Just Call Me Kai says 6. James 4. THP 5. Sly 101 7. Laura 8. Luis 5. E DePaul 6. Lost at 7776. Gray 6. David 3. Iris 6. Derek 6. Herc 4. Roger 7. Suzanne 7. Isaac 5 or above, we win. Gary 5 minimum. Ramon 6. Lindsay 7. Lynn 6. Rob 5-4. Braves might win. Again, nothing personal. Brian 11. Chase 5. Kersey says 5.5 runs. So Kersey, well, I won't explain that. You can't score 5.5. Just so that would be a difficult thing. If they scored 5.5, I would like our odds too. That would be actually miraculous. Brian 12. Gray says 6, and it's my favorite number. Brian says 18. Another Brian. Just all the Brians are chiming in, and they say 5 runs as well. So people kind of, I would say I think that's fair. The 5 to 7 run number. I mean, there's a couple 3s in there. Yeah. That's pretty wild. I mean, look.
That's confident.
I remember, so like yesterday, the Dodgers were up 4-2, and the live line, so like total number of runs, the line was 10.5. So I just made fun of someone for saying 5.5. The betting line was 10.5, over or under. And I looked at that line. The Dodgers had 4 runs. The Braves had 2. And I said, I mean, I don't think the Braves are scoring again. Like, I like the under on the total runs simply because I like the Dodger bullpen. Now, if hypothetically one had wagered on that number, it didn't work out so well because the Dodgers kept scoring. They added 4 runs in the 8th to absolutely demolish your bet. But that was my confidence level. They gave up 2 runs in the first. I was like, I don't think they're going to score again. I just don't. So, again, I have confidence. We've got some more numbers here. Monique says 6. Jose says 9. Frankie 1. Frankie has some courage there. Just give me 1 run. Bullpen's throwing a 9-inning shutout. K-Dub Photos got 5.
Like
Paige says 6. So there we go. Lots to talk about there. We will have a live pregame show tomorrow. So that will be...
Which by then, a starter will hopefully have been announced, I would imagine.
And by the way, worth noting, because the Houston Astros have advanced to the World Series tonight, the Dodgers game has been moved back to 5:08. So it is a 5:08 Pacific first pitch, which is great news for Daniel and myself. We can enjoy in peace our Oregon versus UCLA football game in the middle of the day when the Ducks.
I will not be antagonizing you guys.
Yeah, Matt's team, by the way, is like way, way below both of those teams in the standings. Nothing to write home about going on at the USC football program. But Oregon versus UCLA, going to be a fun one. And then that's just the appetizer for Game 6, the Dodger bullpen game. And who knows? I mean, Matt, this will be the last question. We just talked about the Dodgers offense. We have seen time and time again when the Dodgers score a bunch of runs, and then everyone's like, oh, this is it. Cody Bellinger hits the huge home run. Mookie Betts scores. You're like, this is it, momentum. And then they come back and just absolutely crap the bed the next day. Do you have any reason to believe, any degree of confidence that what we saw from the Dodgers last night offensively will actually transfer over? Now, I'll make the argument, and you tell me if you're buying it, okay? Argument number 1. Trey Turner reached base 4 times. You could make the argument that he's the most important person in the Dodgers lineup. The guy that most desperately needs to get going. He gets 3 hits. The last one was a line drive into left field. Obviously, one of them is the hit by pitch. He gets going. Cody Bellinger, the guy who hit 160 all year, former MVP, looks like the former MVP. Every ball he hits is hard. He's reaching base. He's coming up in clutch moments. There, as much as we talk about Justin Turner clutch moments, like I think Cody Bellinger has taken the clutch belt from Justin Turner because he hits home runs just about every time they need one. Mookie Betts looked good. Corey Seager has struggled. Admittedly, Will Smith has not been great of late. I don't think he had any hits the other night, but Chris Taylor, AJ Pollock is busting out of his slump. So I just look at some of the individuals, the things that I'm seeing. I like Trey Turner. I like where Mookie's at. I like where Chris Taylor, AJ Pollock, Cody Bellinger are at. I think Gavin Lux has had good at-bats, as I said. No hits, but 2 walks in his last appearance here. So I actually do. Am I foolish? Am I naive to think that, like, is this fool me once, fool me twice, and I'm about to get fooled for the 29th time? Where are you at, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's reason to be optimistic that some of that will carry over. I mean, obviously, to expect Chris Taylor to hit 3 home runs and AJ Pollock to hit 2 is unfair to expect.
Okay, so Matt is taking the under on 4.5 home runs from AJ Pollock and Chris Taylor, just to clarify there.
I will take the under on that. But I think a lot of the points you touched on, there's reason for optimism, and not for whatever reason. I mean, I think it's obvious the team doesn't want to go home, but when their backs are against the wall is when they just seem to play their best. Yeah. And I think we'll see it again tomorrow. I think they will feel a little more slighted or counted out because Max Scherzer now can't start. And, most expectations around baseball, my guess will probably be, the Braves are probably going to close this out now. They caught a huge break, blah, blah, blah. And I think that'll just further add more motivation to the Dodgers. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, is it going to be, whatever they ended up at, 11 runs again? Probably not, but 5 or 6 or 7, is that completely out of the question? No.
If I put the Dodgers over-under run total at 5.5, are you taking the over or the under?
I'll take the over on that.
Okay, and you said they need 5 to win.
I could see them getting 6.
Okay,
yeah.
So there we go. We got people. Laura is saying to me, she's like, so Jeff, I'm confused. You can't have it both ways. Are the Dodgers winning or losing? Laura, you are catching on. Beautifully catching on to this. You nailed it. We've got some other people. Brett is getting it. Brett says, come on, Jeff, tell us the Braves will win. Lock it in. You're going to have to turn on the pregame show tomorrow to get my prediction. I'm keeping that under wraps. There will be a continued streak that we're shooting for. That's the hint that will go. So tonight I'll just talk about how confident I am, and then tomorrow maybe I'll contradict myself for the good of the team. Matt, you will not be on the pregame show with us tomorrow. I just got you to say that you think the over on 5.5 runs. Would you like to make a prediction now while we are here, knowing that you will not have a chance to be on with us tomorrow in the pregame show?
Sure. I will go Dodgers win 6-3.
Okay, 6-3. And is that a comfortable 6-3? Is that like a 6-1 where the Braves tack on at the end, or is that like a 4-3 and the Dodgers hit a 2-run home run in the 8th to let us sleep easy?
Yeah, I think it's probably tight throughout most of the game.
Okay. And do you want to and your opener would be? I'll put you on we'll do our normal predictions. So I want you. I'll throw one extra. So who's opening? Who's your prediction for who pitches first for the Dodgers? Who do you think is going to be the MVP? And then if you would like to throw another bold prediction out there about somebody's stat line, a pitcher who pitches multiple innings or a hitter that hits a home run or something like that, you can throw that. I just threw a lot at you with very little warning here.
So I'll do, I think David Price starts.
Okay. I get it. Left-hander, maybe get some length. Who knows? Just David Price and pray is the approach there.
And I'll combine kind of the bold prediction with key contributor and Mookie Betts. I think he shows some power.
Okay,
it's one thing that's still like I don't want.
Is that are you saying home run? Like, are we just saying a ball off the wall? Okay, home run. Okay.
No. Yeah, home run.
Okay.
Like similar to last postseason, like Mookie's doing great at the top of the lineup, but the one thing that has kind of been missing is a little bit of slug. I think he's had a couple doubles in the postseason, but kind of the big home run. He's with Chris Taylor helping turn over the lineup. He's come up with runners in scoring position a couple times where a home run would have been key.
Yeah.
So I think he finally gets that in Game 6.
Okay. I love it. Again, I'll make my predictions tomorrow, but we'll look through some of these here. Eric's got Trey and Mookie as MVPs. THP says Evan Phillips for opener. And Evan Phillips, I also may be the MVP there. So I imagine maybe get a couple innings out of Evan Phillips. Skyraptor, Evan Phillips for sure. So this is like an Evan Phillips appreciation. Somebody asked about whether or not he should be around next year. The answer to me is clearly yes. He has no options, so they can't send him down to the minors, but he does have, I believe, 3, maybe 4 years of team control remaining. As good as he has looked, he touched 97 at one point. His slider, nobody is touching. So I'm very pro Evan Phillips. I think he definitely sticks around. Boomer Assassin says if David Price starts, we are done. I mean, my only issue with that is like he won't be worse than Joe Kelly was, and the Dodgers won last night. So like, I don't think David Price could do anything. Like his leash is not nearly long enough to completely sink the Dodgers. It would have to be multiple people completely tanking back to back in order for David Price to kill them. But there you go. Laura says I like Price the person, so he will go 3 decent innings. There you go.
That would be huge, honestly.
Yeah.
Like if they get 2 innings out of David Price, that would
massive.
be significant.
Yeah, because then it allows you to go to Vestia and not feel like you need 3 outs from him. Some of those guys, you can play matchups and that sort of a deal. Lost It says Pujols home run, which I think is, not the craziest thing because you imagine that there's going to be a left-handed reliever. The Braves have a bunch of those guys, and at some point, Pujols is probably going to get They weren't afraid to bring lefties. I mean, people thought he'd get 2 at-bats yesterday, and then they'd bring in a righty to face him and pinch hit. I mean, he got 4 at-bats. They just kept putting lefties out there on the mound for Pujols. So that's not crazy. Boomer says Gratterall as the opener. That's another guy that's on our list of possible there. Jason asks a question we mentioned. Is it possible they switch Buehler and Scherzer's day? It is possible, Jason. I think it's dependent upon whether or not you believe Scherzer is going to be available Sunday. I think if you're playing the odds, that is unlikely. And if he's unlikely to be available Sunday and you need to win both, then you probably just keep Buehler. Matt also made a good point. Keep Buehler in Game 7. Matt also made the point that if you move Buehler up, he probably pitches less innings than you would hope. So if you only get 4 out of him, then you basically need 14 innings from your bullpen in 2 days, which is a little bit more complicated. Mike M says, let Justin Turner pitch. He is not on the roster. So unfortunately, for that reason and 10,000 other reasons, he will not be pitching. Brian's got Lux for MVP. Kaloe says, just keep Catterday out of this. I think there are lots of Dodger fans that agree that Tony Gonsolin tomorrow is not. Look, I'm like the most pro Gonsolin person I think I know, and I agree with you.